Hi, what's up? I'm Kat. Welcome to my channel. And today I'm just gonna be filming a very quick little video going over what I think are 5 really great either intro or beginner sci-fi recommendations. So I know for so many people, science fiction is considered like one of the most intimidating genres to get into. And you know, sometimes for good reasons. Sometimes there are these epic space operas that are so confusing. The world building is insane. They have new language, they have alien races, they have all of this. And yes, those can definitely be a lot to get into and a lot to really brace yourself if you're new to the genre. I can see how it's incredibly scary. But that being said, there's a lot of sci-fi that I think is perfect for people who are just starting their science fiction journey. A lot that deal with very light topics, deal with basically just our world with something a little bit different, and a lot that really is not hard to get into. So I have a list today of 5 books that I think pretty much anybody could read and get into, and I'll break them down by what type of reader I think would enjoy these, and hopefully you might find something that you enjoy. So to start off with, I have 2 books that I feel give a very similar premise, a very similar type of idea, and these are The Measure and The One. So both of these deal very specifically with our everyday world, our normal world, but a new type of technology or phenomenon is introduced and we're following people as they adapt to it and learn to live with it. So let's start off by talking about The Measure. So in this book, there's one morning where everybody over the age of 22 wakes up to a box on their front step, which has a piece of string inside it. And over the next coming weeks, it comes to light, people have started to realize that the length of this string corresponds to your lifespan. So people with very short strings obviously don't live very long. People with long strings, they live a long time. So we're following a few characters as they go through this journey of finding the boxes, finding the strings, trying to decide whether or not they want to open the boxes and see what their strings have in store for them. And then the people who do choose to open it, we're following their life decisions with realizing if they have a very short string, how does that impact their life? What do they decide to do instead? Do they change the way they live? Do they make wildlife decisions? Do they just really go down a different path than they previously had? Or say if they have a long string, they decide to just stay settled and keep going. Part of what I like about this type of book too is it really gets into the ramifications in society of what this might mean. So part of it is, for example, there becomes a hiring bias against people who have short strings. So it becomes much harder for them to get a job and they can't live to quite the same type of lifestyle as somebody who has a longer string. Say, for example, particularly military members. So they will not allow anybody to deploy who has a short string in that chance that they might die while on deployment. Part of why I think that this is a very good recommendation to get into sci-fi as well is that it's very character focused. So if you are somebody who cares about characters in the books that you're reading, you get very emotionally invested, this is definitely one where you can follow along their lives and really feel for them as they are going through this and as they're changing their lives based on what they discover in their strings. And then very similarly, The One by John Mars. This is a world similar to ours as well, but there is a new technology that's discovered where people are able to identify their soulmates based on DNA. So a new dating app is developed where basically people send in a sample of their DNA and they're matched up with somebody who genetically is said to have the perfect match. So we're following 5 different people as they decide to make this decision to get their DNA tested and see who their soulmate is. And this has a lot of ramifications because some of these people, they're already married and they come to realize that no, their soulmate is somebody else. Or people who realize that perhaps their soulmate is the last person they'd expect, or somebody who is on paper so completely different that you'd never think anything would work. And it's really interesting. It's very, very fascinating, some of the pairings that are made and some of the ways that this impacts their lives and how they go about figuring out how to deal with this. I feel like this book could definitely be described as a thriller with sci-fi aspects because so much of it was very thriller-esque. It left on so many, every chapter left on a cliffhanger. There were so many twists and turns that you really didn't expect, and it was incredibly engaging, incredibly fun, so fast-paced. And I think this is definitely the type of book that any thriller lover would read because it does have all of those like thriller aspects that people love. It just has like a little sci-fi twist on it. So for the graphic novel or comic book lover, I would recommend We Could Be Heroes by Mike Chen. So this is one where there's two people who meet in a support group for people who have no memory, and they realize that both of them have woken up within the last year, absolutely no memory of their previous lives. But when they woke up, they also had superpowers. So one of them has super strength, the other has the ability to like mess with people's memories. So we follow the two of them as they kind of team up to try and discover, like, did the same thing happen to both of them? Like, did somebody turn them into people with powers? Did they go, like, do they have similar origins? Because, you know, they must if they both have such similar stories. So yeah, they're just like going through this adventure of trying to figure out who they are, trying to figure out who did this to them, and then going to take down some kind of evil entity. I found this one was super fast-paced. The characters had like a very lovely friendship, and it was very much like focusing on people who are really not meant to be heroes, but they're trying to find like a way to adapt to this new situation in their life. For the historical fiction or like very technical science person, I would recommend The Apollo Murders by Chris Hadfield. So it takes place in the 80s, and we're following a world where we're following this idea of like, what if an Apollo 18 mission had launched? I guess actually it would be the 60s, because it was during a like very Cold War era type of scenario where US and Russia are very much rushing through the space race, and they're both trying to get to the moon as fast as possible, right? And it's really interesting to think about like what would have actually happened had they actually like crossed paths during the space race, and how the different like countries of the world would have reacted. So this one, it's very thriller-esque again, because we are in this like space mission and there's somebody potentially causing sabotage. There's something going wrong. There's different like mysterious people at work who might be trying to sabotage this mission, and we don't really know who's necessarily on what side. So it's very intriguing that way, and kind of has like that mystery type of setting with incredibly high stakes, because this does take place primarily in space as well. And then part of why I would say it's for the science lover as well is because Chris Hadfield, the author, was an astronaut, and he does get into a lot of very technical details about the astronaut life, the like space launch process, the life in space, which is super interesting because, at least to my knowledge, everything that was within that scope was true. So it's very interesting to learn all of this information. And then I just have one last book to recommend, and this one is more for like a philosophical reader, somebody who likes to really think about life and think about humanity, think about our world. And this is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. So it's very short. I think it's only about 200 pages, and technically it's novella, so it's definitely something that's much easier to get into as well, because you're not going through this massive like 800-page book, which, believe me, I have a lot of those sci-fi ones and they're rough. So this was very like heartwarming, comforting, very like a hug in a book almost. We're in a future world where there previously had been robots inhabiting it, but there was this event that's kind of like a massive exodus of all of the robots in the world decided that they did not want to live among humanity anymore, and they all went out to the woods to live alone and completely separate from humanity, because they didn't think it was beneficial to them anymore to be part of the world. So we're following a tea monk who their profession is essentially to go from town to town and serve tea to the town folk while basically taking confession in a sense. So they are there to sit down with the residents and have conversations, listen to their testimonials, just like be there for them in whatever capacity they might need. And this tea monk is not fully satisfied with their life at the moment, and they decide to just kind of wander in the woods and see what, you know, might be out there, just kind of get away from the normal path. And there they come across a robot, and this is the first interaction between a human and a robot in a couple hundred years, so they have a lot to talk about. And a huge part of this book is essentially like, what is it meant to be human, and what do humans do? What is life like? What is the purpose of life? And it was incredibly incredibly heartwarming, like such a really good thought-provoking book at times too, and very, very philosophical. So yeah, there you have it. Those are 5 sci-fi recommendations that I have for people who are new to the genre and maybe looking for something that they might enjoy. If you'd like me to do more videos like this, please let me know because I have so many recommendations. And as always, please subscribe if you haven't already, like the video, leave me a comment, tell me what sci-fi you'd like, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.